I'm so happy to be here.
There we go. All right. So after I'm going to go through my little spiel here again, of course,
Okay.
welcome you all to the call. I have an absolute thrill and pleasure to welcome here to the conversation tonight my sister and amazing, I think she's incredible, holistic life coach and clairvoyant, who I've had a front row ticket to her journey and in witnessing her move forward and through in being of service through spirit. What I also want to mention too, what I'm really honored about is that she is also a level 1 certified instructor for the spiritual art of mediumship program and a level 2 mentor with me as well. So we've had quite a journey working tandem with the spirit world over all of these years. So I'm really excited for everyone to meet you and to get to know you, in the ways that I do. So thank you for being here. I know this is a big one, for us to come together. We've never done anything like this together before.
No, we haven't. It's very exciting, and I'm so pleased and I'm honored to be part of this invitation and to be sharing in conversation. And so I love being part of community, and however we can support one another and share in what we know and what we can all learn from one another. So that's the way I see it too. So yes, this is wonderful.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So, Marianne, I just want to, have just you begin really giving you the stage here and just giving opportunity to share with everyone. How is it that you came to doing the work that you're doing today? What has been your experience, or how did you wake up to the spirit world?
Well, how did I wake up? I think I've actually throughout my life, I had some pokes and nudges and experiences, but I just wasn't accepting them. And so this can go back to all the way when I was young, experiencing spirit, but throughout each of my life areas where things were happening, whether it was, with my own self, usually it was with myself as I was growing up, sensing spirit, knowing spirit. But then I actually was also then in the experience of entities as well too. So not only, did I have the experience with the loved ones and spirit guides, I was also, my soul was also challenged to what I was going to choose to do through, some of these entities that came forward. And so those were very dark and realistic. And so actually it was, it was probably I was trying to figure my age out when it was 10, 11 or 11 and 12, when this all kind of was taking place, where I actually was already doing space and energy clearings within the home. And I was going and blessing all the rooms every night because of my own personal experiences. I needed to rest and sleep at night, and I didn't want to have to be in these traumas of and these situations with spirit. Of course, I've always had a very, very close connection with Ascended Master Jesus. And so needless to say, that when I was in these situations and experiences with dark energies, he was my go-to. He was my savior, and I'm not using savior as, like you hear out in the gospel or, people saying it in their preaching and such. Truly, in that sense, he really saved me in all those experiences, because that was the one thing that even when I couldn't remember everything, I knew that he was there with me. So my relationship with him really grew over the years. And so, and then of course that numbed out my relationship with spirit really took a dive, because my life took a dive as well, because of the choices that I was making, where I wasn't really living into who I was and wasn't accepting who I was. I was the champion chameleon, gold medal winner for being a chameleon. And so life took a dive for me. And it really, I have to say the very first next prompt experience happened. I happened to be at your place. I went to your place for a weekend girls getaway. It was just for me to get away from the kids. And not that, I mean, I don't say that in a bad way, but I was just like,
I think every mother on the call understands what you're saying.
Leaving the family behind, and I went to my sister's, and actually what turned out to be a girl weekend turned out to me felt like a spiritual retreat. This is where you introduced me to having a reading and having connection with angels, and the things that came through you as a medium at that time. There was no way that I even had exposed some of those truths to you, because I felt so ashamed and so unworthy. And to know that I was loved so deeply by this connection of all that is holy that was coming through to me was a life changer. And so my experience through that connection, that night when I went to bed, I was so taken up into a surrender into what I had received in messaging and forgiveness and love, that that was so unconditional, so deep, and so potent. There's no way I can describe it other than that. It's like my room just filled up with all this green energy. It was so warm, and it was pulse, plasma like, and pulse and soft, and it was just morphing and turning. It was green. I couldn't even see the ceiling and the light anymore. That was the fixture. The room was swirling with all this soft, beautiful, angelic energy. And through the window, there's this massive light that was just shining in, like somebody's taking a major spotlight and just putting in through the window. And I'm like, trying to cover my eyes a bit because it was so bright, and I couldn't figure out where this is coming from. And so then I was tired, and as I was emotionally drained, but I was watching all this transpire around me, I actually made the effort to get out of bed to go look at the window to see where this light was coming from. There was no physical reason for this to be shining in the room the way it was. It was all heaven driven. It was all divinely driven. So that was like really an intervention where, I was be able to place back into a love relationship with myself or life. But wouldn't you know it, that's not the end of the story. I still detoured and took the crossroads. And when I came to a crossroads, I took the wrong turn, I guess, and I didn't stay on path. And so I went down this other dark place again, and where I really had so much trauma. I created so much trauma in my life, so much darkness, so much. I was in depression. I was living for doing everything whatever I was told. I wasn't speaking up. I lost my voice. I lost my sense of power. I wasn't happy. I was in controlling relationships, and work. I had to. There was the expectation in my job, I was to meet that. In order to meet that, I had to be who they wanted me to be. So I had to be that person, and I wasn't allowed to be myself. So again, this conditioning of the collective to make everybody else happy. And it got to the point I didn't even know how to make myself happy. I didn't even know what my dreams were. I didn't know how to dream anymore. Nothing, you name it. I was numb. I wasn't living. I didn't have a sense of spirit, like nothing. And then so it got to a point where through your journey and our conversations we'd always have, that I was opening up to the world of metaphysics. And of course, that's not to say nothing was happening in my home, because there was a whole lot of activity that was happening in my home, but I didn't know how to support my sons either through that, and the things that I was experiencing as well. So with spirit, I didn't know how to deal with that or understand it or work with it. And of course, because I had all this trauma from my past when I was a child and when I was dealing with entities, I was really afraid. And of course, all I wanted to do was put the blinders on. Not dealing with this. No, I just shut the conversation down with my kids, which wasn't healthy. So thank goodness I can still have a way to kind of recover that with them right now for them to come out of that thinking. However, so I went into metaphysics, and that had to be like one of the very first things that I had to heal was my fear of the light, whether that was, all that is holy and divine and loving, or what is within the light but's in the shadows.
Right.
Right. So because light is light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
It's
that's
amazing
where,
because that's one of the things too, we can talk about belief systems and things here in a little bit, but that's what happens is that we actually think we fear the dark, and it's the dark we're afraid of. But in the scope of it, it's actually we're in fear of the light, right? Or in a deep distrust of the light.
absolutely, and that's, it's because we don't realize how much power we actually have as an individual, not just as a human being. I'm talking about who we are as a spirit. We have so much spiritual power within us where we haven't even been able to discover it until we're in a position to discover it, whether we're, curious enough to go into that or whether we're forced into it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what was the ultimate breakthrough, or the ultimate, coming to Jesus moment, or coming to Master Jesus moment? Let's call that.
Yeah. Again. Yeah, I would say the ultimate, you're right, it is like the ultimate breakthrough. That was actually when I became widowed. And I was widowed at the age of 48, and it knocked me to my knees, literally. I think that probably what happened is I went into the deepest crevices of my shadows and the darkness. And within my grief, I was so lost in grief. I really, to be quite honest, I didn't want to live anymore. And there were a lot of times where, I was under the consideration about, I'd rather just be dead. But if it wasn't for my sons relying on me, I probably wouldn't have even gotten out of bed, to make sure that they got to school and stuff at that point when they were starting to move on and with life a little bit. But I fell into deep depression, obviously, a lot of anxiety. I wasn't sleeping. I was awake, like, I don't even know how many hours straight that I would be awake. And I wasn't eating. Severely malnourished. I couldn't even pick up on the body signals, my signals of my body to tell me when it was needing anything, even to drink. Like the boys would go to school and I'd be sitting at this chair and at the table, and when it comes, here it is 4:30 or 4:45, and I'm still sitting in the same spot. Yeah. And I just didn't have any life in me I didn't know how to breathe any life into anything around me. And so it was through these really the darkness of my grief, in which I actually found the ability to open into the fact that I still can have a life, that even as angry and depressed and upset I was, this grief also took me, when I say it took me into the darkest places of who I was, it took me into those ugly places that I didn't realize who I had been. Who had been as a wife, who had been in, what that meant in our marriage, even as a mother, as a neighbor, a co-worker, every aspect, a sister, you name it, daughter, every aspect, any relationship that I had. I didn't like what I discovered about myself. And so this was one of the things that where my grief really took me, was on one of the pathways of one of the forks, was healing through these, through the shadow self of who I was, and realizing that I was worthy of actually living again and being able to resolve that darkness of how and why that darkness was there. That was another thing too. It's not just having it there and saying, okay, that was part of me, but it's actually choosing to do something about it, choosing to, resolve it, to heal it, to love it. And before you can get to that, you have to accept it. Man, I was a bitch, right? Like, whoa.
I'm laughing not at you. I'm just laughing at your comment, and I'm not backing that up at all. I don't want
Yeah, because again, I wasn't living an authentic life. I wasn't living as in our truth, and that's one of the things that calls us into who we are really meant to be, is to be in that truth of who we are. And it's I know we can hear that and we can say it, and or we can read about it, and I think that it gets glossed over too much, because the deepest meaning within that is about being authentic in who we really are as these soul beings.
Right. And authenticity, this is always, a conversation I have that comes up often, it's not based on a definition of authenticity that someone else has of you, whether you're being authentic or not. What this authenticity is that you're living authentically true to your own self, yet you're being authentic to your soul, authentic to, just everything that is the deepest and most, I would say, vulnerable space within inside of yourself. This isn't vulnerability by definition held anywhere else in the Webster's dictionary or anything, because, this is, no one can determine your authenticity.
Exactly. And that's just it. That's the one thing about it, is nobody can determine it and tell you what it should be and
Right.
what it should look like, and therefore what you should do and how you should act and how you should speak, or even how you should sound, how you look. Like anything that is so true about you should just be able to expose it, be in that. It's
Right.
like I get this vision of a baby. Like we have these, like we give life to life, right?
Yeah.
And these babies we open, and with open hearts, like we accept with open hearts and open minds and open arms, and all that we do is want to love them, and we don't expect anything from that baby.
Right.
And yet we don't do that for each other.
Right. The greatest expression of compassion is really the extension of what we offer and give to ourselves. We can't be of service, even as mediums. We can't go out into the world to be of service, to be the compassionate healers that we are, if we're not extending that same depth and scope of compassion for ourselves.
Absolutely. And even as that, like even to every healer needs a healer. So even though we're in it, right, we're still needing to step up and manage our own healing. I mean, let's face it, we're in this physical body, having this physical experience. There's going to be triggers, and those triggers have to be taken care of, because if you're not looking after your housekeeping, your inner housekeeping, you're not going to be of any value to anyone as a medium. Like the more we can heal within ourselves, the more we can open up and be a real, be available to other people. And it's also our,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it's also about our spiritual responsibility in mastering our spirit.
Yes. And that, I love that, mastering our own spirit, because if we want to look at really honing in on the spirit world and mastering that connection to the other side, there is a call for us to do that deeper, ugly work. Because what happens, as I shared with everyone last night, that grief can create a barrier between us and our loved ones on the other side. It adds to the congestion in the veil. And even, the best medium will struggle in being able to reach their own loved ones because of the grief that's present. But this is no different in when we look at these beliefs that we hold about ourselves, this inability to have compassion and offer ourselves grace and mercy during, as a result of our challenges, to do our deeper healing work. Because if we're not willing to do that, that too creates congestion in the veil. Because the deeper truth of things, as I share in my program, the veil actually doesn't exist. It's we humans that actually create the separation. We create it first with our ego's perspective and our physical body, right? So we humans are creating the separation. And now we're adding to the congestion of to create the veil. For spirit, there's no veil. They can come and go, and they're able to interact, but it's all of this stuff in between us and them. That's our responsibility. It's our spiritual responsibility.
Exactly. And it's like our muckery. It's not heaven's responsibility to take care of all the things that we mess up and we like create challenges for ourselves. I mean, that's part of what our soul is here to do, is just like, okay, you've made that decision, you've made that choice. Now what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You're going to put the blinders on? Well, yeah, you can, but that's only going to get you so far.
Only for so long, especially where spirit's concerned.
That's exactly it.
And don't get your attention through these soft, gentle, caressing, loving ways. The entities are going to show up to say, hello, are you ready to step in your power, light, and authority yet?
Absolutely. Right. And so that's just it too. And the thing is too, is like, and I just want to speak to something you mentioned too, about the fact that, all our grief will create separation between, us and the loved one that we've lost. And yes, that's so true. But one thing that through that too is to remember is that for someone who goes through that, is to remember that that is, as you heal, as you allow to let go, as you allow to surrender into the what was, and opening to what can be now, is all part of that releasing. And that will, that takes care, heaven takes care of that as well too.
Well,
So
and I
that
think it
heals,
also,
right?
thank you. And I love that, and it just brings up the thought too here is like, even for those who are grieving, it's just because the grief is getting in the way of you experiencing your loved one, it doesn't mean your loved one's not there. And they're doing everything they possibly can to catch your attention, to reassure you that they're with you, to bring reconciliation, and just to be able to help bring some healing to the grief. I think that's the one thing in all of the readings that I've done over the years, is that spirit always, they're not suffering on the other side anymore. When we cross over, we completely let go of those ego parts. But one of the things that they want so badly is for us to not suffer as a result of their loss. They don't want us to be in the pain that we're in. And so even the spirit take great responsibility in helping us to recover and reclaim our life after a loss.
Absolutely. And that's the thing too, is that even when we go through such a loss, like everyone's loss is different, and that grief is deep and it hurts. And we can lose our sense of faith along the way. And I know, like I did as well too. It was
so
like,
did I.
right. And it's just something that we have to find our way back on. It's part of that experience, part of the journey, but that's also part of what makes us so much stronger afterwards, was to know how much that, we are not alone, and how much that spirit's always with us, and we're never abandoned by spirit.
Exactly. And I mean, they send so many signs and so many symbols, and they try to catch our attention in all kinds of ways. And I think it, even for us as mediums, if we're kind of living and we're not opening up to really expressing that deeper, authentic truth, and really honing in and learning the sacredness of that connection to the other side, they're going to orchestrate things. And I think one of the funniest things in terms of witnessing you kind of coming out is the fact of when you move to a different city and you found your condo, it was like half a block away from the cemetery, and you had no choice but to engage with the spirit world.
And boy, did I have engagement there.
Right.
And it's so true. It's like practically right out my backyard and around the corner, it's just like, yeah, man, it was there. And that was so, and it is funny how it's just like, yeah, you might be wanting to ignore it, or you might be thinking you're not connected, or you think you don't have any connection. Well, here, let's just find out. Right. And that's the thing though, I was reflecting on the mediumship and things like that. And it's just like, whether you're a medium or not a medium, or whether you're just curious about the spirit world, it's like, we're not really tested. We're just given situations, and it's like we have complete control over what we're going to choose to do, right?
Exactly.
So, but and also another funny thing that really happened too, Bonnie, is the fact that where spirit wants to make their presence known. So before I was actually moving, or before the move actually happened, and we were painting the house to get it ready for sale, we we're changing the coat of paint on this one wall, and there's this great big imprint of a capital H. Now, my husband's name was Henry, and we called him Hank. But every time we put a full coat on and it dried, and then there was this big H, and that must have been happened like 5 or 6 times. So it's just like, okay. There's a whole lot of work that he was putting you through. But,
right.
I mean,
I was the one painting. Yeah.
Yes, but that again was also in the fact that it was something I needed to know, that he was there helping, and even though I felt completely abandoned, alone, and isolated, and didn't know who I was, and what I wanted, and what I was supposed to do, and I felt completely overwhelmed with everything that I was left with, and I didn't know how to just to know that that was another sign,
right,
that I'm there.
So I'm really curious. Was it hard? Like, I want to say, I'm asking a question I kind of know the answer to, but for the people tuning in here, was it hard, or has it been hard for you to step forward in letting people know that you're a medium, that you work with the angels, that you have, even through your holistic nutritional programs, that this is the connection you're utilizing, spirit, you're utilizing the angels in support of the person's health and wellness. And has this been really, has this been challenging for you to kind of come forward in it?
Yes, it has. First of all, I have to just say, when I'm scratching my head, it's just because of the energy. So it's not that I have hair problems or a head problem or nerve problems. It's
no,
energy.
it's the crown chakra that just kind of begins to go off on connection. Yeah.
But yes, getting back to that, yes, has been very difficult. Not well, I guess part and parcel was the fact that I had to step more into it. I had to accept it. I would say, yeah, I can do it, but actually staying and demonstrating and showing up to do it is about stepping forward. And so in that way, yes, it has been, but it has been difficult in the terms of coming out and saying, okay, here's what I'm doing, because for years, everybody, for my whole life and as long as I had been married, and everybody, and I worked at in a corporation, everybody knew me for what I could do, and it wasn't anything related to the metaphysical, it wasn't anything related to anything spiritual. And then to come out like that and say that, and to have people recognize and hear that there. So of course I did have some supporters, and of course while I was working, I could not, because of the role and the position I held, I wasn't able to disclose that, because they would think that it would just ruin anything, because it was a confidential role, right? So yeah. I couldn't support people because they would think that I'm just going woo woo,
Right. But here's the other piece of it, as I shared with people on the call the other night, and said, being a medium is more than, talking to dead people. Being a medium is more than just sitting down and doing readings for people. Lots of people don't even want to pursue development or learning more about even their own abilities, simply because they don't want to be doing readings for other people. Like that's just like, that's almost like the resistance that shows up. But this is where I've mentored and worked with a lot of mediums who have very, well, let's call it regular day-to-day jobs. Not every medium is someone who is meant to go out and do readings or to take on the, a professional scope of mediumship in the way that I have. That there's lots of teachers, lots of nurses, lots of people like you in a corporation who are doing a regular day-to-day job, but also using the connection, this source, these love beings to help you not only administer your role here, but also help people. I remember you telling me how people were just like coming into your office and they were just like divulging their deepest secrets, and they're saying, oh, I feel so much better, and then they'd leave. Like that's the natural thing about a medium, is that everybody just seems to automatically tell us their stories. Like it's because of the compassion, it's because of the healing that's happening through us. Not that what we're doing, it's just within the presence of that light and that love.
Absolutely. And when you're actually moving into mediumship, you can actually set that intention for how you are going to be helping and being of service to others. And even though I was out in the working world, like in the normal world, what would be perceived as normal.
What we discussed last night was the abnormal world, because that's the abnormal world.
Because that's what I was just going to say. Yeah, exactly. So it was, allowing them, like, I was doing my work while they were just sitting there and what they perceive as the physical, right? And doing that. In the meantime, I'm working energetically. You're right. And so they would be like, oh, I didn't realize, oh, your office feels so good, I don't even want to leave, or divulge. And I would see the auras of the angels behind this person as they're crying and releasing and, sharing and their grief and their pain and suffering is what they're doing. In the meantime, I'm praying and I'm working the energy to, whatever the angels are asking, and not to interfere on that individual's
free will
energy, free will either, right? So I'm respecting that at the same time. But what had happened, like for me specifically, when I made the change, of course, what had happened was that because I was making I had life change, grief, becoming a widow was my life change, and I had to make certain decisions about what I wanted to do. And so and I knew I needed something different, and so making a clean slate. and that was selling my home. But then it was just like, I'm moving, and of course I always wanted to move. But so, in that, this is how all of this came out, how I was able to show up more as to who I really was and what I did. And so the people that I had worked with for so many years that I really liked and admired and respected, there was a circle, or I'm gonna call them a circle, a group of them that didn't want anything else to do with me after they learned that. And that was really hurtful. In that, and then of course, neighbors who didn't know that part of me, and then that came out as well too, and that kind of that ruined the relationships as well, and that really hurt, that it had been invested so much, and also that's part of my own grief. And it was, but that was also part of my grief there, exactly, because I thought, what's happening? Here we are, all this time we were friends, and all of a sudden we're not, right?
Right.
Yeah, it was.
And it definitely happens for a lot of mediums coming forward to really begin to express that authenticity, to be able to speak these bigger truths and express this after keeping it quiet for so long, like keeping this such, first it's a very internal journey, and then it reaches a point where this almost like this self-combustion. But there's also, the greater spiritual understanding here as well, is that, the loss of friendships or things, I don't want that to be a deterrent or a fear for people to not pursue this either. And what it's an indication of is that those soul contracts that you had in healing karma, of supporting the person for a certain time in their life, and that goes both ways, that actually that soul contract has come to completion. So when people fall away from our lives, even though it's hurtful or can be hurtful, it's also in celebration, because that means that at the deepest soul level within ourselves, we've actually completed those contracts, we resolved the karma. And then what it does is it allows for new relationships to come forward who we have higher serving contracts with in this lifetime. So it's like, friends fall away. It's like I always said, one fall away and 10 come forward. It's just beautiful how it begins to play out.
And right, and getting to your point, what you said last night, like this is the new norm. Like this, spirit beings being spoken, being vocal about it, expressing it, doing it. This is the norm. That's what is supposed to be happening. And so, sometimes I still run into people now who come into my world, so to speak, through different type of relationship, whatever. And of course, those that don't accept me, or, because they're a little freaked off by, the fact that I'm doing this, and it's like a little closer to their world and they want it doesn't bother me. I don't take it personally. That's their soul's journey. I'm on my own. And that's one thing I really want people to do, is like, can we live together? Like when we live in a world where we can make it so much more peaceful for one another, that we can do what we do, support each other, cheer each other on, no matter how different we are, no matter anything, right?
Yeah, which I think is the greatest call of humanity in general. I'm just looking at the time here and really honoring the time and everything. I just want to ask you one more question before we go to the chat and begin answering some of the questions that are coming in. What advice do you have for people who are grieving? Like what is it that you could really help them to know or to understand as they're moving through their loss of their loved one?
Oh, this is huge, and grief is so different for everyone. And so this, based on my experiences and what I had gone through, is to know that to focus on yourself, to give yourself that time that it takes to be that compassionate self, because you need to rely on yourself first and foremost, and you cannot deny yourself of what's going on. Allow that grief to unfold as it needs to, at the pace that it does. Don't try to conform it to what other people say. Science can always say, well, this is what's supposed to happen. The doctors can always say, well, this is what you should be doing now. And it's just like, no, I mean, like there's not a cookie cutter approach. There's not a golden rule book on how to recover from grief. Everybody can put their experiences together and in the collective, and it's still not going to fit a person's experience to a T. So it's like, let that be where it needs to be. And, but the thing is to remember, this is the important thing out of all of it. The heart can heal again, and it will heal again. We just have to be allowing to be in our pain in order for the healing to happen and be received.
Oh my gosh,
That's
so such wisdom. Thank you for that, Marianne, because the truth is we never get over the losses of our loved one. And so just being able to throw away everything that people are telling you about what this journey needs to look through and just know that over time your heart will heal again. I think that's
mhm.
beautiful. Thank you. And again, the time goes
You're
by
welcome.
so quickly. Like I feel like we get so much more to talk about. Like we're just,
Exactly.
anyway. Yeah, anyway, I do want to go and turn it over to to everyone here. And again, just loving that everyone is here. Oh my gosh. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Hi, Sharon. Oh, Sharon has a wonderful question, Marianne. How do you keep your emotions in check when you do your readings?
Oh, as the medium or
Yes,
as the
as the
as the
medium,
medium?
as the medium, how are you keeping
Okay.
your emotions in check?
Right. That's a very good question. Actually, what happens at the very first when I make connection with, my clients, angel team and their divine legion, the love is so overwhelming. It's so intense that sometimes it's so much for me. I feel it, and I just have to just tell my person. I was just like, I'm sorry, I just need a moment here. There's so much coming in for you at this time.
Mhm.
And it's so potent, it's so deep, and I will feel it. And if it brings me to joyous, loving tears, I let that happen. But once we get into the work itself, it's all about I'm holding space for that person. I'm allowing, this is not about me. The work is not about me. The intention is not about me. It's about the person that's sitting across from me. So I'm able just to remove that part of my ego self and just like put that aside. I'm asking the angels to take care of that. And I'm just keeping my energy open and allowing that to flow and be in to know that. I mean, this is about the best. It's always about what that being the best who I can be as a channel and an open energy for the person that is sitting in front of me.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. And there is a lot of emotion. I think this is one of the myths that are out there is that we mediums need to hold it all together. And as I teach in my level 1 program, there's actually 3 different levels of consciousness of grief itself. And so if we've kind of just experienced our own loss, we're in a sympathy consciousness, and in sympathy, in that vibration and energy, we're going to be breaking down. We're going to be crying. We're actually not going to be a very good service to our sitter. It's in that moment that, really, and I've heard stories where the sitters are now comforting the medium simply, because of the loss. Like it's a shared loss. And so, as we begin to do our healing work, etc., we really want to move into a higher energy field, and that is in the consciousness of empathy. And that when we're in empathy, we can now really relate to someone. We're dealing with our own loss, but we can relate to what they're going through. And then ultimately, as we heal our own personal grief and we move through this, we get into compassion, which means and in partnership, a passion for helping and working in conjunction with the person on their healing. The other piece of it too is just as Marianne shared, it's okay to let your emotions go. I do that too, where there's sometimes I'm just so overwhelmed in the sorrows and the loss and what's happening. My spiritual empath is just overwhelmed in the moment that I just need, I just say to my sitter, just as Marianne does, you know what, hang on a second. This is really deep. I just need a moment here. And I will cry, and I will just, then I collect myself again, call upon my team and ask, for that help and assistance. And what it does is it really shows the person you're doing a reading to that you understand.
Exactly. And the thing is, that's the one thing too, is that when you're working in connection with energy like that, and you're working with your sitter's energy, you can feel their pain, you can feel their grief and their sadness. And sometimes when you bring in a message and it hits that heart space of theirs, you feel it. And yeah, there's just like it takes and you cannot help not feel it in that sense, because it's coming through you, through your connection to the other person. It's all about the energy moving, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So here's a question from Jess. Jess is asking, does the same apply to communicating to pets who've crossed over? I
Oh,
speak to my past babies, but most recently, my familiar crossed and he hasn't spoken to me yet. I am still feeling guilt. Could that be blocking him?
That's exactly it, because there's still grief sitting there. So as much as you want to hear from your loved one, your little buddy there, it's a matter of knowing that guilt and that grief is sitting there. Once that heals, that can open up. And again, it's like trusting, and maybe there is about connection with animals. Absolutely. They have their angels, they have their spirit guides. This is all about energy and the light that we are, and choosing what we're going to incarnate as, and in each lifetime that we come into something, right? And so there's this energy, this light person, light being that was the animal, right?
Yes.
So, again, depending upon how long it's been, I mean, the pet could actually be getting some nurturing and care and healing on the other side as well, too. And that could be part of it too, right? Mm-hmm. But needless to say that, yes, there's very much about easily connecting and communicating with the pets from the other side. Yeah.
And even in this life, pets have a very high vibration and energy. And so, when it comes to us having to make what can sometimes be grueling decisions to be able to, as I think the term that is commonly used is to put them down. I like to say when we lift them up. But when we, have to make the decision in terms of participating in their transition by making that very decision, we can sometimes feel as if, question whether we making the right choice, or is this the right thing to do? I feel like I'm killing this being that I love, et cetera. But because of the high frequency and energy of these fur babies, they're also communicating with us, whether you're a realized medium or not. They're still communicating, and they're asking for help. Very often our fur babies have difficulty because of the high level of soul contract that they have in supporting our healing. They have a hard time letting go of their physicality. And so they really ask for the help and assistance. So, I went through this, of course, with our beautiful puppy as well. And so just in that, as we lifted him up, and just knowing that he was asking, he was suffering, he needed help. And so there again, just, Jess, if you're feeling any guilt whatsoever and having to make that tough decision, just know that your fur baby was asking you to.
And another thing too that can also happen to bring you some comfort is the fact that you can invite a man to come and lay on your bed with you at nighttime as well too, to be with you or to have a visit. I mean, the same thing we do with a loved one who's crossed over. You can invite them to come visit you in your dreams at some point, and you can do that invitation as well to your puppy as well too.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. That's a great a great thing to offer. Okay. So Helen has a question here. She said after her other passed 11 years ago, she showed up quite quickly. She could sense her in the house through smells like cigarette smoke. That's like my mother-in-law did that to me all the time. And so then she said there were several events. And there were, some were signs, and she's very aware of the presence. When her husband passed away almost a year and a half ago, she had gone to Egypt. She climbed Mount Sinai. Oh my gosh, Marianne, it just reminds me of you, of climbing the mountain in healing your grief as well. And she burned a letter to him. Since that time, his signs have felt more presence, but they're more infrequent. And so how do I invite his presence closer again? And I know you just kind of shared this invitation, but for you, how have you opened up to receive connection with your husband on the other side?
I just continually keep talking to him and inviting him, not just about what I need from him, but actually expressing, appreciation as well too, and gratitude for what he is doing for me on the other side. And even at times where I don't think he is, and that, holding space or, helping situations with the boys or even with me and stuff like that. And it's just constant. It is about constant connection of just prayer. It's you don't have to be in hands on knees as prayer. I say prayer in terms of conversation, in terms of invitation, and whether it's over a cup of coffee or sitting there. And a lot of times too, where you can just kind of feel that, where you've got this memory of wishing you were connecting. It's just like a lot of times we wish it was happening and it's actually happening. So it's to release as well the judgment around what it should look like, what that connection should be, and trust that if it came in and it just kind of flowed in, or it just appeared in our heart and our mind, it's just like knowing that that's actually happening.
Absolutely. And I think this is again where from the mind, the overthinking tendencies that we have of our ego, is that we can all, look at the things as when we're thinking of that loved one, we're thinking of them because they are there in that moment. We're just looking to have the sign or the awareness in a specific way. So we've almost formed an idea of how it needs to be, instead of kind of looking at the softer, gentler ways. I mean, spirit works in whispers, and they work in very soft ways. And so, even just when you have the inspiring thought about the individual, as Marianne shared, when you have a memory come up, that's coming up because the presence of your loved one is there. When you are, wishing, or you're in a state of really, longing or seeking even a physical connection. And even though you feel so separated, the physical body separates you, but your loved one is right there, holding you, comforting you, and doing everything possible to help you through this very difficult time. The love never dies. Love never dies. And so, just as Marianne said, as you just are even having conversations like what you and I are having right now here at the table, it's just, you're having a conversation and you're talking to them. Your constant call upon them allows for them to stay connected to you. So as I explained last night on the call, spirit does go into a healing or rest phase after they've died. But once they've gone through their healing, it becomes a different kind of relationship. And I don't mean a different kind in it changes when the aspects of love. It's in how we communicate with them that changes. And for those individuals who we have such close, intimate connections with, this is one of the things a lot of the mediums, in taking my training, always say, I can receive communication from other people's loved ones, but for myself, it feels stilted. I'm not getting it. And the reason for that is we can feel, because this is such an up close and personal loss, it's like sitting in front of the television set and you're right close where everything is pixelated and you can't make out the picture at all. And so it becomes necessary, just to be able to look at other ways that they begin to communicate with us. Lots of times through our dreams, that becomes the quickest, easiest way as we continue on our healing. Those thoughts or ideas, it's like, I wonder if that's a sign. It was a sign. You wouldn't be wondering if it was a sign if, otherwise, spirit works with us. We conclude it one way with our ego, but in knowing that this is also the various ways that they work to attend to us and care for us after their crossing.
Right. And, and I feel the pain, I feel the grief a lot. And like my heart really goes out to you. But I also want to add to that. Yeah, I could just feel it.
Yeah.
Is to also take, what I did too, and what helps to build the energy or to bring in the spirit and invite them in is also to remember those close times you had, and what it felt like to hold his hand, and what it felt like to be in an embrace, and put yourself back into that. And this is not about, going back to what isn't anymore, but it's about remembering what that was like. Because it brings in a sense of peace, and it brings in some healing that happens. It brings in this, a bit of relaxation into the fact that you can breathe a little easier instead of being contracted. It allows you to to have more heart space. So, whether that was like holding, sometimes what I did too was just to remember what it was like to, to hold his hand and just sit there with that and allow it to be what it is. And, whether you get a sense that your hand is covered by his, or it's held in that same way, or however it was you held, if that is what comes through for you, you got to trust that that's what's coming through, that's what's happening, because otherwise you wouldn't you don't make the stuff up. Spirit won't allow you to make the stuff up.
No.
That's another thing too, right?
I love that. And I think this is also to understand that the spirit world actually utilizes our imagination as a way and form of communication with us. And so we conclude that we're imagining it, but it is within those faculties that we're actually receiving that connection with our loved one as well. So just as Marianne said, if you can imagine what it felt like to hold his hand, or what it felt like to sit beside you, what it felt like, to and just imagine whatever it is, imagine the embrace, imagine, the Christmas, the holiday, whatever it is. If you can just close your eyes and imagine it, just know that through the scope of your imagination, your loved one is with you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Amanda has it is kind of a funny question, which I love. So of course, Amanda says, okay, so our dad, because of course, both we obviously sisters both have, share our dad on the other side. And she wants to know, does he play games with us where it's like fun things where he'll say, tell your sister to do this or tell your sister that? Like, does he go back and forth between the two of us to try to invoke some fun and some playfulness and to even tease through each other from him?
Oh, absolutely. I think he does it more often when we're actually in conversation with each other and we're working or doing something. And then it's just like, okay, dad's here or whatever. And then we get actually what will happen as well, too, is that not only will he get little tease, like he'll tease and play through one of us, that to be part of this conversation. But then what happens is that Bonnie and I, the little girls in us, can actually get a little carried away, and then he's the one actually reining us in and kind of, okay, come on, girls, like straighten up, kind of thing. Like now.
He scold us from the other side.
Yeah, so that happens as well too. And of course, there are times where individually we're kind of we're in our own homes and spaces and places doing our own thing, and where he'll come through. But that's one unique thing about spirit as well too, is that they can be in more than one place at one time as well, kind of thing, so that there's this sense of, oh, I got dad, and Bonnie will kind of be having a conversation with him as well too, so I'll pick up on it or feel the energy on that. So
yeah, I actually phoned Marianne prior to our interview here tonight, and I just said, as I said, I said, oh, hey, dad's here, and I shared a message with her, even before. So it's really great to be able to just, share that the good stuff, and of course the joy. And our loved ones love when we're having fun. I mean, that any celebration, any joy, any laughter, anything we're doing actually draws them closer in, because they exist in a higher vibration and frequency. It's easier for them to communicate with us. So when we are grieving and when we are challenged, we're in a little bit lower, it makes it a little bit harder for them to reach us for the reasons that we've shared, but they are there. It's just when we move into a time within our journey where we can move into a little bit more lightness of heart, a little bit more ease within the loss itself, and you begin to find some joy again in living, then all of a sudden, as you're celebrating, as you're having fun, as you're laughing, that you really draw in. That's the energy where it becomes very easy to communicate with the other side. I always teach in my level 1 program. I always love to tell mediums, this is very very real work. We are dealing with people's hearts. Their hearts are on the line here. They're exposed, they're raw, they're vulnerable. So we always want to honor every single person who comes to sit down in front of us for their grief, whether that loss was 3 weeks ago or whether it was 30 years ago. The person in front of us is grieving, but we as the mediums, this is also important. We're honoring with depth of great compassion, but we also want to shift so that we can come in with some energy of excitement, with some energy of fun and playfulness as we approach this, not because we're mocking that grieving whatsoever. It's simply because that frequency and energy allows us to have greater flow between the physical and non-physical worlds, which means it becomes so much easier for us to be able to be of service and to help someone on their healing journey. So that energy is vital in terms of being able to really help with some of the clarity, almost dissolving some what would be the congestion within the veil. It just helps to let everything flow a lot smoother.
And it takes less work off of spirit to have to come down from that frequency to meet us, because we're not in that high place, right? So that's why energetically we have to open and we raise our energy. And so by raising it, we create that. And I mean, that's all about, it's like cleaning house. When you're cleaning house, right? You're moving energy, like things, the house even feels better. It shines more. It's just like, whoa, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
It does.
Yeah, exactly. I love Sharon's question here. Sharon says, why do we fear the light, and how do we overcome it? Well, first and foremost, we'll talk about the kind of where the fears come from in this. But Sharon, one of the things about my level 1 program is I really help to help individuals to overcome that fear of the dark, the fear of the light, to be able to really change the relationship that they have, not only with the spirit world, but with the light as well. And so as you become more empowered in the light, it helps to build trust. As you begin to work with spirit, as you begin to engage with your angels, it starts to build some confidence, and where confidence rises, trust can continue to be born. And once you establish a trusting relationship, you're able to kind of move forward and through what are those barriers or blocks of fear that can come up there. So again, I mean, we're having this great conversation, and whether, I mean, I love my program for what it offers. I've been answering a lot of emails here too. I want to say thank you so much for all of the emails, everyone. I got through several of them today. There's still more forthcoming as far as my replies. I'm loving the questions, the feedback, everything. One of the questions I received just talking about my program, it just came to me, and Sharon, we'll get back. I want to have Marianne speak of how do we get over the fear of the light, to add to that. But while it's on my mind, I had someone reach out and ask me if this opportunity in March coming up is my only opportunity in 2023. And at this point, yes, it is. My calendar right now doesn't really offer a whole lot of flexibility or space as the year kind of goes forward. And this is such an important program to me, and it's so important. It's a passion that I have in helping mediums. And so right now, the way it sits, it is the only opportunity and chance for the program. And so if there's anything you can do to adjust your schedule, make it work, I just would love, to support you in whatever way I can. Anyway, thanks, Marianne, for on the pause there. But why, from your perspective, do we fear the light?
Well, we fear the light, I believe, because we've had such a teaching of fear-based living that, if it's not tangible, it can't be true, it can't be trusted, it's not real. And if it is, oh, it's bad. And I really feel like that's been our collective thinking and through society, and that there's only designated people who know what light is and how to work with it. And it's just like, that's so wrong. And it's just off of a paradigm that's so old and outdated. Yeah. And so it is about, realizing that's another thing too. We've never really been taught. We've never been able to wake up to who we truly are and what light is, and that this light exists in us. So if we're afraid of the light, then then you have to question, are you afraid of your own light? Are you afraid of yourself? And when you talk about the beliefs through your program, this is the one thing about each, not just on the level 1, but if you take then and advance through it, it keeps challenging you to go deeper and deeper within yourself, to look at yourself even more, to see what else is uncovered. But even that aside, I really do believe that's all part of who we're supposed to be. We're always supposed to be questioning our beliefs. And it's just like, yes, it may have been serving at one point, but then there's another point in time where it doesn't become valuable and beneficial anymore. So it should be questioned. And so even in terms of questioning the light, it's just like, what do you want to play? Whose playground do you want to play in? Bottom line,
right?
Right. And so it's just like, we can pretend that that's not there. But again, if we do choose to ignore something, when spirit's bringing something forward, we can choose to ignore it. And it's only going to be ignored for so long. And then the universe is going to make us take action. And when the universe steps in to make us take action, it won't be pleasant.
Right, exactly.
Right?
It's really kind and gentle and easy at first, and then it's like the hammer comes down, right?
Right.
You know,
So
and I
it
think
is.
I agree. You know, this is where a lot of it is our conditioning. We're conditioned to, and I can look at, you know, growing up, of course, as I shared in Catholicism, Mary and I both, you know, where we go into these doctrines that actually teach us more about the devil than they do about God. And so I was raised, or we were raised to fear God, to fear the light, because God, you know, this concept of God that is held within the doctrine really dictated that this is something we needed to be afraid of. So not only were we conditioned to be afraid of the devil, we're conditioned to be afraid of God, because God is going to punish us. We're sinners, all of these
You're
things.
going to hell.
Right, everything, right? So it's such a part of the conditioning. And so, you know, to say, why are we afraid of the light? There's this dualistic belief that of, yes, I'm afraid of the dark, and yes, I'm actually afraid of the light. And so when we look at, we are all expressions of the same one, and we kind of move beyond into a higher spiritual understanding of who we are as divine beings, and who we are as, you know, these, whatever the belief of a higher power can be, whether it's source, universe, unconditional love, whatever word. I know I have a girlfriend who always says, or Kermit the Frog, like it doesn't matter what name you put on it, but it is about having that clear, strong faith in and of that something bigger than who we are, that when we can go beyond the conditioning, we start to no longer fear the light, but we now let the light. And when we begin to move into let there be light, that's really where we become the greatest contribution to our world. You know, I go back again because of the beginnings of my life, and you know, the first page in the Bible doesn't say bubble up with light, protect yourself with light, avoid the light. It says let there be light. Let there be light. And so again, you know, under any doctrine, as I said, you know, Catholicism is nothing against it, because I honestly have some of my, you know, my deepest faith was born here. And so I respect I respect all religions, not just that, just because of what it brings, the essence of what it is within the invitation. And so, you know, just looking at it, saying, okay, where does it come from? Why do we fear it? Because we're conditioned. We believe, just as Marianne said, that it is, you know, we need to be afraid of it.
And you know, there's nothing, you're never going to get rid of fear itself and in general, because I mean, that helps us to discern and to be on guard and to be alert and to be able to protect ourselves when we need to in this physical life, right?
Yes.
However, when it comes to the light, it's just like there's nothing that you really, there's no fear there at all. And that was one of the most amazing things for me as an individual, to be so afraid of the light for so many years, from the time that I was so young and then into my young adulthood, and then to be able to start stepping into my own spiritual power, to start taking back my power, to be able to be in the power of my light. There's nothing more freaking empowering. And you know, just to, I don't even know how to say it any different, just to, that's so magnificent and so profound to know that you've got that much spiritual power in you.
Yeah, so Drew. I want to move to Barb's question. I really love your question, Barb, here. And so she says, so in the instance of being a donor recipient, have you had experience with the energy and emotion or the sadness of the donor?
I have never had that experience personally, but I have heard about it. But I do believe it's true. In my studies as well too, that's been something that's been very much on the table and in discussion, is the fact that those energies and feelings and emotions of that the DNA come with that old organ. And so there's, by osmosis, it does get shared. It's no different than I'm gonna not to take away from this, but it's almost like, you know, if you adopt and bring in other people into your family, and then you all start living by that, there's by osmosis, there's an exchange of even DNA and everything that energetically that's shared in that, those impressions just naturally happen. So I don't believe this, again, it's my belief, but I believe that all that energy comes from that individual, and that there's something there that I don't know how you could take that away, but that's just me.
Thank you for that, Marianne. I've actually have had an experience in doing a reading, Barb, for an individual who was a donor recipient, who actually had the spirit of the person who donated the organ with them, but had it as a message because this individual health, he had always cared for his health, and the recipient was being maybe a little bit neglectful, not wanting to take the medication, was kind of just feeling guilty about having someone having to die and in order for them to live. And so this spirit actually came in, one, giving the recipient permission to live and to live on their behalf. It's like not only was there the gift of the organ itself, but the spirit was saying, take it with my love, and please take care of it. Take care of it. Let your health, your nutrition, let your well-being be better than ever before. Like just honor me with taking care of this organ. And once that spirit was able to bring forward the message to the recipient, then the recipient was no longer entangled with the spirit energy, feeling the emotion within the emotional kind of experiences of the individual, etc. It was like once the spirit was able to just give the gift and just share this beautiful message, it was like everything changed for the recipient. There was no more guilt in terms of living because someone had to die.
I love that. I love how spirit
right?
works. Yeah, that's incredible to come through and be able to, like straighten up, get your act together.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. In a very kind, loving way.
Right.
And sometimes not necessarily. Sometimes they're pretty blunt, to the point, and they've got a message that they need to share. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Okay. So here's another one from Renee. Renee says, I never had the best relationship with my father-in-law when he was alive, but after he passed, I feel him more so now than ever. I feel like he has said, I'm sorry and I'm here for you. How crazy is this?
That's not crazy at all. That is so natural for that to happen, because a lot of times that, we all have our experiences here, and then so when we cross over, we're having this reflection, or we see things about what we did there and in life or on this earth, or how we may have hurt others. And spirit's not going to want you to be in pain any longer than necessary. Like they don't want us to suffer. So for them to come in to make their presence known, and for you to feel that apology, to feel that that's what's happening, that's so real. That's real as real.
Absolutely, right. It's as real as it truly gets. As I shared on one of the calls too, we look at these thoughts that we have, Renee, that those are inspiring thoughts, right? The moment we have an inspiring thought, like you think of your father-in-law in that moment, that means he's there with you. You're having the thought that he's saying, I'm sorry. That thought, and then it's the first thought we have. We always want to pay attention to it. We want to pay attention to the first inspiring thought, because if we have an inspiring thought and it's followed by a thought of a loved one on the other side, it is our loved one communicating with us. What happens is after that thought, then our ego gets involved. Now our ego is talking us out of it. Oh, that must be crazy. I'm not even a medium, and I'm having this, like this can't be happening. Is this really happening? Our ego begins to question everything. So I invite you to always to pay attention to that first inspiring thought you have, because that is spirit communication. When you have the thought and you immediately think of your loved one, it is from your loved one. Everything after that is just the ego. Okay. Yeah. So such a great question. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we have a few. Yeah, we do. I just want to make sure that I'm honoring the time here for everyone as well. Okay, Marianne, this one is coming in from Jen. So she said it's not so much of a question as it is a comment. But when her ex-husband passed away, she felt huge relief. It was like free from the toxicity that had been their relationship. But now, as time has passed, she finds herself really deeply sad that he will never truly get to know their children, and watch them move through their life. Also because he couldn't get sober in his life, and he had tried so many times when he was alive. She just feels so sad for her children because it wasn't the dream she had for them when they were born.
Oh,
What do you have
feel
to
your
share?
heart. Well, first off, to be happy and relieved when somebody crosses over after it gives you that breathing space, I always say, heck, why not? Like there are some people where have just caused us so much pain and suffering that when they, I don't wish harm upon others, but when they do cross over and they're out of our lives, it's just like, man, that's such a relief. We deserve to have relief. We deserve reprieve. We deserve not to have that toxicity. Then to move into sadness, after a time to move into sadness there, that's natural, because that actually now is no longer about you and what happened within between you and him. This is really about now your sense of compassion and love towards your children and what could not be for them in that way, because you're seeing what could come out of that for your children. So that's why you're feeling that sadness now, and that's a form of grief in itself that's revealing itself to you, and on behalf of your children. So yeah, that's normal. That would be normal to happen.
And, whether the relationship was good or whether the relationship was bad, it was still an important relationship for you. And so there is a depth of healing of grieving that does take place, not only in terms of you feel relief in terms of the fact that the hardship is over, but there was a love shared here too, Jen. So your sadness is, yes, you're witnessing your children going through life now, and you're thinking about what it's going to mean for them. But there's some layers of grief here for yourself that you're also moving through, whether maybe you realize it or not. The other thing to understand is that in the worry about whether, he's going to miss out on your children's lives, that's actually not it. He's actually going to be very much a part of your children's lives. He's not going to miss out on anything, any celebration, any big event. Their highs in their life and the lows in their life, he's going to be privy to everything. So when our loved ones go, they're not gone forever. They're still very connected, and they are a part of everything that we go through, every celebration, every birthday, every experience of our life. So just to bring some peace to you, knowing that he's not missing out on the children. He's going to know exactly their successes, the accomplishments, how where their life takes them. I've had lots of when people move and become adults, and maybe their parent died when they were younger, and they really didn't have much of a relationship, and especially they go now and they get married, the loved ones at the event, when they go to have children. I've had so many times where Spirit says, I met that child before you did. I know who they are. And so because there's always this longing of just, I wish Dad was here to have, I know that I experienced that when I had children. I always wish Dad could be here and have met my kids. But the truth is he did already. He knows my children. He knows all of us because he's surrounding us. He's loving us, and he's watching over us too. So just know that, Jen, your kids do have their dad.
And absolutely. And what also is happening within that too is he's actually from the other side holding space for them for their greatest benefit as well too. He hasn't abandoned them by any means either. So he's going to be working on the other side and for his children to create space to, help give them signs and direction and nudges when they need it. And that's, helpful for them. So, that's another thing too, is parents never stop being parents once they cross. So that's another good thing too, that your heart can be reassured in the fact that he's going to be helping them, not in addition to everything else that Bonnie had said too. So
yeah, absolutely. Barb, I want to go back to Barb had the question about the recipient donor. Barb's question now, and says, does that include their mediumship? And Barb, yes, it does, because mediumship is something that is inherited. It's a part of our DNA makeup. So when now you're having an organ brought in, just as Marianne said, now this is becoming a part of your DNA. That means that these talents, these abilities, this is also now almost opened up to become a more of an access point for spiritual communication as well. So we can look back in, through history, so to speak, even on our dad's side of the family, where there's a long line, I say long, but we have awareness to our grandmother, being an open and a medium, and we can look. It's a part of ancestral line. It's a part of the DNA channel. So now that you are receiving an organ, that DNA is going to bring forward a part of what was in the ancestral channel there as well. So yes, if you are having experiences now, that can be a result of the DNA contributing to this openness that you now are experiencing with the other side. It can also be representative of, if you remember last night I had shared, or the night before, that we kind of move into mediumship. We might have it happen at an adult onset abilities, that where something traumatic happens, where we go through an experience, we might have an accident, you may even just from your own health and going through health challenges to then all of a sudden becoming the DNA recipient can be enough to wake up these abilities inside of you. So the combination of what are your inherent abilities now with the DNA channel of the ancestors only begins to amplify that connection to the other side. Okay, really good question. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Wow. Okay. To see if anyone else here looking for questions. It always bounces back and forth, so I apologize here as I'm going through. Oh, Eleanor, that's so beautiful. She said, when her second granddaughter was born, her daughter told her that it was my sister who had held the baby first. So her sister had, oh, see, that's just so beautiful. I have chills on that one too. Oh my gosh. All right. So again, here, if we haven't got to your question at all, of course, I'm going to be on a new, as part of a new endeavor and project, I'm going to be creating and answering those. You'll find answers to the questions we've discussed here on our time together. Those ones that did not get answered here this evening on my YouTube channel. I've had a lot of people looking for the replays, and a reminder, everything is available on the event page. So you'll see not only are there the bios of all the speakers are there, you have links to their individual websites. This has come up a few times in the emails that I've been answering, even just from Chloe. And of course, now for those that would like to get in touch with Marianne as well, her website address is on the event page. So if you have direct questions, please feel free to reach out to any of the speakers. They'll be glad to answer any of your questions, even after this event. They'll be happy to support you and tell you more about their services and how they can maybe support or help you as well. So anyway, it's been just such a pleasure. Marianne, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your willingness to be a part of this conversation. I mean, I love you like a sister. And of course, love the love that you are and the light that you bring into the world for so many people. And to each and every one of you who's been a part of this conversation here tonight, I wish you a restful sleep, and I will see you here same time, same place tomorrow night with our next speaker. So until we meet again, bye-bye for now.